Well, good morning, Memorial Road. Beautiful worship so far. I have never gotten the chance to sit next to Stephen while he's singing, but that sounds like an angel. So you guys have a really tremendous just vibe in here. And I am, as Andy mentioned, Corey Baird. I've been at the Serve Midtown Church about 3 years now. And I think this is my third time getting a chance to speak to you. And this is really exciting for me because I did grow up here. And I mentioned my name's Corey Baird. That might sound familiar. I know we actually have a lot of OC connections in the house. And so perhaps you're familiar with the Smiling Hills, Baird Drive, or the whole loop around the university that's Baird Loop. Or maybe you know the long-term famed Bible professor, Dr. Baird. I feel compelled to let you know that I am the great-grandson of none of them. As it turns out, I happen to just be named Baird. I did grow up here at Memorial Road. I did go to Oklahoma Christian, but we are not related to those Bairds. I say it's coincidence. My short answer is that group of Bairds got the brains and the street names, and my group got the hair and the beards. And so we take what the Lord gives us, and we try to work with it. But I'm really grateful for the chance to just talk to you for a couple of minutes about something that means a lot to me this morning. And those two words on the screen, restoration and redemption. Before we put up this next picture, I want you to raise your hand if this following scenario sounds familiar. So you're at your home one day and you hear a knock or a ring on your doorbell, and you go to see who's there, and outside standing on your front porch is a door-to-door vacuum cleaner salesperson. Has anybody experienced this? Okay, a handful, not very many. This might be a dated reference. All right, so these people are really convincing, and if you have gone through the process of hearing their pitch and let them into your home to actually do a demonstration, raise your hand. Okay, some of you. All right, if you haven't done this, it's really kind of fascinating because they have a pitch for you that's generally pretty convincing. The guy told me, hey, buddy, I just want to come in and clean a room of your house for free. I don't have to sell you anything. You don't have to buy it. I'll just come clean it. I can mark that I tried another house, and you can get some free service. And I was like, dude, you had me at free labor. That sounds great to me. And so I invited him in. What that loosely translated means, if you let them into your home, they're going to spend the next 2 hours slowly twisting your arm to try and convince you to purchase something that you likely don't have the money for. But if you've ever walked this path yourself, you know that they've got a very interesting demonstration that oftentimes they'll start with. They'll have you go get your own vacuum cleaner, bring it out, and then clean a portion of your floor as thoroughly as you can. They have you vacuum it to your satisfaction. And then what they'll do is they take their equipment and put a brand new filter on it, and then they go right back over the exact same spot you just vacuumed. And sure enough, within a few seconds, they pull it up, and it is caked with an entire layer of dust and dirt and grime that were buried so deep beneath the surface that your standard run-of-the-mill vacuum cleaner simply couldn't get. The passage we're going to look at for a few minutes this morning is from the Old Testament prophet Isaiah. We're going to read through chapter 64, and we'll get through verses 1 through 9, but we're going to take it kind of a chunk at a time to start off. And I think it's important to note the intended audience in this passage, if you want to follow along in your Bibles or on the screen. The intended audience here is God. This is a passage reminiscent of a psalmist's plea that God not forget his people who are suffering. And so these are their words in verses 1 through 4. The words of the author in Isaiah say, "Oh, that you would tear open the heavens and come down, so that the mountains would quake at your presence, as when fire kindles brushwood and the fire causes water to boil, to make your name known to your adversaries, so that the nations might tremble at your presence. When you did awesome deeds that we did not expect, you came down. The mountains quaked. From ages past, no one has heard, No ear has perceived, no eye has seen any God besides you, who works for those who wait for him. So this is our first portion of the reading. And just to simply break it down, we essentially have three characters who are mentioned in this morning's reading. The first one is the Father. Oh, that you would tear open the heavens. That's the first character. They're praying to the Father. The second character that we get is creation and the nations. They're depicted as trembling in the presence of God. And then the third character is the witnesses and the believers who experience God's power. Now, if you go back to the first verse, in the opening portion of this scene, what's depicted is the author pleading with God to tear the fabric of the heavens open and create a hole that brings him into the earth's atmosphere. At the outset, the idea of distance is already portrayed. The people who feel like God is not near to them. They recognize that God has shown powers in the past, but at this point in time, this is a group of people that longs to feel redeemed. And so Isaiah shows us some characteristics of God which are really undeniable in these first couple verses. Firstly, God is hidden and sought by righteousness. Secondly, God is mighty enough to simply rearrange the cosmos at his discretion. And one of the other things that strikes me is that God is very much compared in this passage to heat. Heat that causes brush fires, that causes water to boil, that causes volcanoes to erupt. These people recount the miraculous salvations that God has provided to the past generations, and this does speak to where God chooses to dwell. As verse 4 and 5 say, he chooses to dwell in those who seek him. Let's go on to verse 5. Because what happens in this moment, in verse 5, there's a shift in tone right in the middle. And we see this sometimes in the Psalms, where at the beginning of 5, he starts off with, you meet those who gladly do right, those who remember you in your ways. But then the author almost does a full 180 on the spot. But you were angry, and we sinned. Because you hid yourself, we transgressed. We have all become like one who is unclean, and all our righteous deeds are like a filthy cloth. We all fade like a leaf, and our iniquities, like the wind, take us away. There is no one who calls on your name or attempts to take hold of you, for you have hidden your face from us and have delivered us into the hand of our iniquity. So here is where we hear what the people really feel in this moment. The witnesses and the believers who, in this present moment, are very beholden to their past mistakes. These people feel the burden of their sin, and they wish to be relieved of it. Who among us can't identify with that? Now, the way it's painted here, it seems a little disjointed to me. Because if you go back just one slide, it says that in the series of events, if you see how the author paints it, it says that you were angry and then we sinned. Because you hid yourself, we transgressed. The author is stating that it is because God hid himself that the people fell away. And this is where we start to introduce ourselves to a character that isn't mentioned in the passage, but is heavily implied in this moment, which is the enemy. Because this is where we see the enemy working in our own psyche. The ripple effect of how this author sees it is clear. God got mad, and so I fell away. Then God turned his face, and so I fell away more. And then God handed me over to my iniquities, and then I was gone. And the cause and effect may not entirely line up. Let me ask you, have you ever wanted to lash out at God and blame him for setting the groundwork for your sin? I know I have. I've had a multitude of times in life where I've thought, God, if you hadn't allowed this and that to happen, then I wouldn't have ended up doing this and that as a response. And it's okay. If you feel like me in these moments, don't be ashamed. This is actually very natural. This goes all the way back to the garden. The very first time a man was confronted with the possibility of taking accountability for his actions, God asked Adam in the garden, "Did you eat the fruit that I told you not to eat?" And Adam said, the woman that you put here with me, she gave me some fruit. But God, don't blame that on me. That's not my fault. Adam did not take accountability. He shifted the blame. And this is an age-old thing that people do. And in the moment, I honestly think this author and these people are feeling sorry for themselves as well, which is entirely natural. Throw a little pity party, table of one. But it's easier to blame God for our mistakes and point at him for stepping away, even though he's not the one that actually moves. See, the author says it's due to the rage of God hiding his face that the people have been delivered to their iniquities. But I would contest, if this were a courtroom, I'd say, I object, Your Honor, because the rage of God did not come first. That's not what started this whole thing. After all, when that vacuum cleaning salesperson came into my home, let me clean up my spot to my satisfaction, and then went back and showed me all the junk that was still there, I couldn't be like, well, that dirt wouldn't have been there if you weren't here. The dirt would have been there if they weren't there. I just wouldn't have been able to see it. If you've ever experienced that series of events, it's actually pretty fascinating. There's a portion in the carpet cleaning sales pitch where they will take something like dirt or soil, pour it on your carpet, and then for good measure, they might even rub it in to make it worse. And in your mind, you're going, oh, this better work. And inevitably, you know the end result. They clean it up because they have a very expensive, high-tech piece of equipment that is able to thoroughly clean and deeply cleanse your stuff. And if you go through the full demonstration, an object lesson is made clear right in front of you. That if you're willing to submit to a higher power, full and thorough cleanliness through the one who offers it are always available. The need that these people are feeling, that I think relates to every single one of us this morning, is the need to feel like we are entirely forgiven of our past. And I need to emphasize, this is the need to feel like we are entirely forgiven, because that's the only thing the enemy can take from us. I fully believe we are entirely forgiven. The enemy can't remove that, but he can, in this season of life, remove us feeling like we're entirely forgiven. So my encouragement this morning to you would be 3 simple words return, submit, and remold. Personally, I struggle not to identify with these Israelite people in almost viewing my life through the lens of a gigantic microscope combing over every blemish of my past. Something I share openly at Serve Midtown and other parts of my ministry is that, hi, my name is Corey, and I'm an alcoholic. You guys are not a very good impromptu 12-step room, so we're going to try that one more time. When I say, my name is Corey, I'm an alcoholic, you say, hi, Corey. My name is Corey, and I'm an alcoholic. You guys are great. I am a recovering alcoholic, and I do have a number of years sobriety, but I can tell you that I have less years of sobriety than I have of working in full-time ministry. I can tell you that I lost my spirituality while working as a full-time minister. And then I regained it in the 12-step rooms of recovery. And if I'm honest, I think a lot of that was me blaming God for things that had happened in my life. I struggle getting past that sometimes because we all have a tendency to view ourselves through one of the most polluted lenses we can. You know why he mentions filthy rags in that passage? You imagine the usefulness of a filthy rag? Suppose you pull up to get a car wash at a fundraiser, a group of students washing cars, and in front of you, there's a mud-covered truck that they've cleaned to its entirety. Then you pull up, and what they do is start to wash your car with the mud-covered rags. You would immediately think, wait a minute. You're just going to spread that person's filth onto my vehicle. A messy rag can't clean up a mess. And now think about this as the Israelites viewing themselves as their morality in the very presence of God. Filthy rags trying to clean up messes that only actually make the mess worse. Despite how you may view the current version of mankind, I personally don't think people have changed all that much. As Ecclesiastes says, there's nothing new under the sun. And I think that includes the means of people being self-centered. Sure, the resources and the ways we go about serving ourselves will never change, but the self-serving nature of people is constant. We have to acknowledge this. That's the starting point, is to see the selfishness in ourselves, because that's how we can start to get beneath the surface of that facade to the image of our Creator. Return. Submit. When we do that, we draw closer to God, who decided not only to rip open the fabric of the heavens and come into the earth's ethos, but then to infinitely divide himself into forms so that he could dwell internally in our hearts. Verse 8, our passage continues. Yet, O Lord, you are our Father. We are the clay, and you are our potter. We are all the work of your hand. Do not be exceedingly angry, O Lord, and do not remember iniquity forever. Now consider, we are all your people. Remember how the Father was compared to heat in those first couple of verses? Something unique about pottery is that if anybody's familiar, you know that a potter, in order to finish a piece for its usage, has to first put a piece of pottery into a kiln, which is to say, place it in outrageous temperatures, like 2,500 degrees, and leave it there for an elongated amount of time. And that is how it ensures its long-term durability, usage, and sustainability. If I had one phrase that I would leave you with this morning that I've experienced in my journey, it is that the greatest spiritual ability is malleability. Reading this passage, maybe you identify with the tendency of people to get stuck in sin and then blame God and then fall further into sin and then decide, well, if I'm going to do it wrong, I might as well do it right. If that's you, a willingness to take these things on the front end to God in prayer is what allows the Holy Spirit to come in and start working through willingness. Leading people who are even in the wilderness of their lives to a perspective that is far more aligned with truth. And so the question I ask you is, how willing are you to be remolded by the potter? Lord willing, on November 19th of this year, I will have 10 years of sobriety. But that is something that is absolutely never going to overweigh how it all happened to me. For me, the greatest spiritual ability is malleability. Wherever you're coming from this morning, I need you to know that God is capable of coming into your situation, despite whatever mess there may be, and rescuing those who call on his name. I beg of you first to allow self-forgiveness. Be gracious with yourself. Don't view life through your past. This is what enables you to spread forgiveness moving forward. Return, submit, remold. The Father is a capable Redeemer who knows how to shape us. And to keep in mind, the enemy's one move, and this goes back to the garden as well, his one move, hold guilt and shame over people's heads. That's it. Remember the first thing that happened when Adam and Eve ate the fruit? They were ashamed. Let the shame go and let the enemy go from that foothold. God is the potter. We are the clay. God is the dry cleaner and we are the filthy rags. God is the restoration master. We need redemption. The greatest spiritual ability is malleability. God the potter crosses every single barrier from the curtains of the heavens through the depths of your past and into your heart so that he can reshape us from the inside out. If there's anything that we can offer for you in prayer this morning, we will have 2 elders available at the back atriums. If you've decided this morning that you'd like to put Christ on in baptism, we'd love for you to join us this morning as we stand and as we sing.